Hello, my name is Maria Bezubova and you're at my channel Fertilizers Jazz. Here we talk about events, trends, technologies in the world of fertilizers and agriculture. Please subscribe to the channel, put like to this video, and let's jazz. Today I would like to touch upon a new for the channel, a very important topic, which is related to market trends in fertilizers raw materials. As you know very well, gas, phosphate rock, and potash are the three main raw materials that producers are using to produce key fertilizer types that cover basic plant needs. And the fourth most important nutrient that plant needs, and respectively a raw material that our industry uses, is sulfur. Sulfur and sulfuric acid will be the topic of discussion today with a very cool guest, who is the one who knows the most about this subject, Freda Gordon, Director at Acuity Commodities, a company which is focused on providing global market intelligence and pricing for sulfur and sulfuric acid markets. I am very glad to welcome you, Freda, and thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, and looking forward to having a chat with you about sulfur, sulfuric acid. I know a little bit about these commodities, so we'll see.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you so much. Freda, Acuity Commodities is a very interesting and unusual, from my view, company that chose to be extremely focused only on one single commodity, as you said, sulfur and sulfuric acid. Can you please, at the beginning of our chat, tell a bit how did you, together with your partner, decided to apply such a model of, targeted approach when founding your company?
Yeah, sure. So we founded our company in 2016. That seems like a lifetime ago. Fiona and myself, she's based in Houston, I'm in London. And I think it was just an idea that we both have spent so many years trying to understand these two markets. So it'll be a waste not to see what we can do with that. So that was the simple idea. And I kind of feel like if I can just devote my career into the commodities that I really, really enjoy analyzing, why not? And here we are. I think, it's almost 10 years now.
Yeah, that's an impressive journey. Thank you. And I personally also believe in focus, and I believe in excellence with the focus. My good wishes to you and to Acuity Commodities team.
Thank you, Maria.
Let's move now to the situation in the market in sulfur and sulfuric acid. My first question to you would be, what, to your opinion, were those key events in the year that passed in the market that will influence market this year? Were there something really important or striking for you?
Yeah, I think to me, whenever I look at the market, I look at supply, demand, and also trading. So I'll start with sulfur. I think sulfur supply in general, we are expecting an increase in sulfur supply. And that's because sulfur is largely a byproduct of oil and gas processing. So, right, when you see or expect more oil refineries or gas processing plants being commissioned because of various regulations to remove sulfur from these fuel production, that's when you see more sulfur being recovered. So general trend should be up. I also like to mention something that people tend to forget. There are also regulations, for example, to reduce crushed lump sulfur stocks, for example, in Kazakhstan. So obviously that stock will have to be moved to the market. So that is also considered a form of increase in supply. I guess the only exception for sulfur supply that will be increasing is Europe, because as you know, there are lots of European refineries that cannot process Russian crude oil anymore, which tend to be very sour, containing a lot of sulfur. And that's why the sulfur production, along with many other issues as well, have been reducing in Europe. So that will kind of take away the increase a little bit, but the general feeling for sulfur supply will be an increase. And if we talk about demand, in the past, we always look at fertilizers, phosphate fertilizers. So you'll be an expert in that. I'm nowhere near that. But I would say adding to the mix now, we're always looking at, for example, EV production, EV trends, because the various metals that get to be used in the production of EV itself or EV batteries, they also require sulfur or sulfuric acid as a raw material. So obviously we expect the demand for sulfur to be increasing because of that trend as well. I know it may be a little bit far-fetched, but to me, one of the biggest changes to the sulfur market is more on the trading side, because one producer has basically decided to market the majority of its sulfur directly to end users, meaning no longer via traders or very little via traders. So that's really creating a lot of competition among traders for 2025 allocations from other sulfur producers. So I think that will really change the kind of trade flow or the way that people market their product, buy their products. So I think that will potentially impact sulfur pricing as well, not so much on the supply and demand side.
I see. Thank you very much. What I saw in 2024, what happened in the sulfur market, I'm a rookie, let's say, in this in this market, frankly. That's why we're having you today. So for me, in 2024, marked significant and quick growth of sulfur and sulfuric acid price. What is the reason for that? What is the main fundamentals behind that? And do you think this trend will continue in 2025?
Yeah, I think let's focus on sulfur, because I think that increase has been very, very visible on the sulfur side. But what I also wanted to point out is I actually had a look recently at the price history that we posed in 2024 for various sulfur indexes. And to be honest, the first half of 2024, prices were actually really, really flat. So that means the majority of that increase actually came in the second half. So to give you an example, I looked at the first half of 2024 FOB Middle East, for example. So we were posting between $65 and $90. So that's only a $25 range in 6 months. That's not a lot of volatility. And then in the second half, the price range was more like $90 between the low end and the top end, with the high end touching 170 FOB. So I think that is probably why we have the perception that prices have been very, very volatile. Now, again, take a step back and look at what happened in 2023, for example. The range variation for the same price index, Middle East FOB, was around $95. And then in 2022, it was even more dramatic, $420 range for sulfur. Wow. So in the grand scheme of things, I guess we can say, yeah, there was a little bit of volatility in the second half of 24, but it's not really such a dramatic change. It just happened in a very short period of time. So coming back to why was there such an increase, I think to me, the increase is a reflection of very simple economics. Demand was stronger than supply. That to me was the main reason. And also, sulfur is also a commodity that really can be impacted by sentiment in many different markets. And I think in 2024, especially in the second half, sentiment has been pretty positive, because we've seen healthy demand from phosphate fertilizers, from EV. Of course, you can argue there are lots of ups and downs for, phosphate or EV trends, but generally, the trend was pretty positive. So there wasn't too much downward sentiment being applied to these markets. And that's why I think prices were pretty good. But that was 2024. 2025, I personally think, along with, I think, everyone else, I think there'll be a lot of volatility in 25. And mainly it will be geopolitical risks. Right. But how do we pinpoint that? I think it's really, really difficult, because, for example, if there are any tariffs from the US, that can disrupt supply chains. We've seen that in Trump's first term. So what will the second term be is hard to say, and that's his style. He likes to keep people guessing. Perhaps the more optimistic side of me is a lot of the global leaders will have adjusted to that and can, play along with that better. But certainly there will be some disruption in supply chains. I think it's fair to assume that based on his first term. So I'm also expecting a lot of global policies that will be driven by protectionism. I think that's very clear to see. So I think those will be the key things that will be impacting pricing in 2025, or general just trade flow.
I see. Thank you. Coming back to the question that sulfur is already, at the moment, we're talking today, yeah, at the moment is already quite on a high level. Do you think, and what is this price ceiling that will put production volume of fertilizers that contain sulfur at certain risk? You already mentioned quite a good demand from phosphate fertilizers in the past year. But phosphate fertilizers during past year and right now, and also in the forecast for Q1 and Q2 for this year, are priced really at a very high level. It's of course not because of sulfur, but because of other raw materials and supply demand balance, of course, but also partially because of the sulfur as well. So what is your evaluation if such level of sulfur specifically price already started negatively impacting production of other products or not, or it's not that important, do you think?
I think that's a perfect question. Really, really good question. If I look at phosphate fertilizer producers, of course, like you said, there are many different raw materials, their costs that would impact, what the end product price would be. Phos rock, phos acid, ammonia, etc. So, like you said, I think the difficult part to determine where the sulfur price ceiling is, you've got other raw materials that have also been increasing in their costs, in the price for various reasons. So I think the price ceiling for sulfur in this case is really dynamic for fertilizer producer. But I want to say this though, it really highlights another thing that we always look at in recent years, which is sulfur is also being used in metal production. I mentioned EV, electric vehicles, that really has an impact on, beginning to have an impact on sulfur demand on a global space. So then we look at the cost and the end product price for EV batteries, various metals like nickel, lithium, copper. The end product price is way higher than phosphate fertilizers. So I always wondered, it's not happening yet, but what is the competition between fertilizer and metal producers for sulfur and sulfuric, right? I think going forward, I'll be looking more into that. But if you were to ask me, what is the price ceiling for sulfur for phosphate fertilizer producers, I don't really have an answer right now. It depends so much on the end product price and other raw material prices. I'll say this though, in terms of sulfur cost being so high that it's starting to cause potential, I'm saying potential demand destruction. I would give you an example in Europe. I mentioned earlier with the refineries producing less and less molten sulfur, which is required for a lot of the industrial users in Europe. Now, they're not only facing higher sulfur costs because of the lack of products, they're also facing very high energy costs, and alongside many other raw materials going up as well. So if I have to look at the global picture and think who are under a lot of pressure right now, I would say European industrial chemical producers. They're probably under more pressure. So the cost of sulfur seems to be giving them more of a headache at the moment.
Yes, definitely true. Fully agree. Unfortunately, fertilizers producers in general in Europe are under so many different pressures. Hopefully, we will overcome that. Because there will be a couple of tough years with also the CBAM and all the regulations coming in place, all these changes.
This market is just always changing, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is. On our toes all the time.
It is very volatile, and it's not always for good, unfortunately, as per my understanding. You already mentioned there will be some new supplies coming in 2025. Do you foresee any hiccups from the other hand in terms of supply? So maybe someone will go in large maintenance, or maybe you see something other hiccups that potentially can affect the supply balance.
I think unplanned shutdowns, they're always going to be an issue, and we cannot really predict that. I do see some port logistics issues, for example, loading issues in certain ports. Those could have a minor impact on the market, but it feels like we talk about that every year, right? I think for sulfur, the continued loss of sulfur recovery in Europe will be really something that I'll look at, because the refineries simply cannot compete with newer refineries, such as a new one in Nigeria, for example. So I think that will be the big issue for sulfur. Talking about that, we didn't really have time to talk about sulfuric acid earlier, which is a slightly different animal. If we were to talk about supply disruptions, etc., I think that may happen more for sulfuric acid, because basically with sulfuric acid, there are two ways of producing sulfuric acid. It can be a byproduct from smelters, or it can be a voluntary production product from sulfur burning, right? So what I'm talking about is mainly the smelter acid. For smelters to run, their raw materials would be, for example, zinc concentrates and copper concentrates for zinc and copper smelters. What we're experiencing now is there is not enough zinc concentrate or copper concentrates going around in the world, enough to supply to all the zinc and copper smelters. And that's why the cost of these raw materials have become higher, because everyone's fighting for it. Now, with that in mind, that's actually really squeezing profitability of zinc smelters and copper smelters. So what we're really watching very closely is whether any of the zinc or copper smelters will be needing to reduce their operating rates, or even shut down temporarily or long term because of lack of that zinc or copper concentrate feed. And if that happens, obviously that will have an impact on sulfuric acid, or specifically smelter acid supply. And that could also change the dynamics between people who have been using smelter acid needing to go for more sulfur-based acid supply, for example. So I think the supply interruption will more likely be coming from the sulfuric acid side rather than sulfur in comparison.
I see. Thank you. And also the other question that I had regarding sulfuric acid is your view regarding the new pricing that was just announced for the Tampa contract for Q1, that marked a significant increase versus previous quarter. So does that mean, as we already discussed for sulfur, that it will be like a short or maybe even medium-term trend for 2025, that the price will stay a bit elevated? What is your view and expectation?
So that Tampa price is for sulfur, molten sulfur in the US. And to me, that felt more like a reflection of what happened in the previous 3 months. So that price was set in January, obviously, a few weeks ago, in 2025. I feel like that was more of a reflection of the changes in the spot market and also the supply and demand in the last 3 months. So it's very difficult to do price prediction in this year and age. But I do feel like right now, as we speak, there is definitely more stability to a slight upward pressure in the spot sulfur market compared to a downward pressure for now.
Okay, I see. And I think it will be definitely useful to meet in some time and discuss what will happen, and if really the start of the year, which is quite bullish, not only for sulfur and sulfuric acid, but generally in fertilizers market, how it will move forward.
Absolutely.
I would like to thank you very much, Freda, for your insights, and I will be more than happy to host you more and regularly. And I wish you and Acuity Commodities team a lot of good clients and a very successful business.
Thank you, Maria. Looking forward to coming on to the show again.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. As usually, I will leave all credentials of Freda and Acuity Commodities in the comments. Please let me know in the comments which other questions related to sulfur and sulfuric acid markets you would like to cover, and I will be happy to do so with Freda next time. Please subscribe to the channel, put like to this video, and see you soon.